This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice. It's Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program, although we've got it's a tough week. And welcome back. Mark Taylor-Canfield, Free Speech TV in Seattle, Washington. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. How you doing?
I'm well.
Since I spoke to you.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. You know, it has been a tough week. It's a tough time for a reporter to have to report about these kinds of tragic things, and occasionally it does kind of get to you. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that happens to you occasionally, too.
Yeah.
But the reason I called in today was to talk about press freedom. And it does have to do with the way that these political campaigns have been covered and the way that racial issues are covered in the United States. But I just wanted to let people know that Reporters Without Borders, which is an international advocacy group for journalists, has ranked the United States 41st in the world this year on their World Press Freedom Index for 2016. And part of the reason for our lower ranking than other countries, by the way, Finland is number one. A lot of it has to do with the corporate control of our media. It's not so much a state-controlled media like you might find in Russia or Iraq, China, Iran,
Yeah.
China.
There's a lot of privately owned media in Russia too, by the way. They are out capitalisting us in some ways. In the Chicago school sense, since the fall of the Soviet Union. But anyhow, back to you, Mark.
Yes, well, there has been a tradition, of state-controlled media around the world. The United States is not necessarily suffering from that. What we're suffering from is a corporate-controlled media where just a few corporations have ownership.
Right.
And I wrote over at Daily Kos about this on Independence Day because I think that the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of the press are the basic tenets on which a lot of human rights and civil rights issues have been pushed throughout the centuries, from the Magna Carta in 1215 with King James on. I mean, this has been in the Bill of Rights that the Parliament passed in 1688 in England, and it's a very, very important issue. What we've got in the United States is a Federal Communications Commission, which has been largely controlled by Republicans, who like this idea of corporate media consolidation, so that you just have a few corporations with all of these takeovers owning most of the media. And that's where a lot of our censorship comes from. It also comes from the fact that there's been a lot of prosecutions of whistleblowers in the United States, and also there's a lack of access to information from our own government sometimes. There's a tendency towards secrecy, which is making it more difficult for reporters to actually get the information about the workings of their own government. So I just wanted to let everybody know that Slovenia is actually ahead of us. They're number 40.
Right.
And the United States needs to do a lot better. So all editors, journalists, publishers out there, we need to take this issue on directly.
I remember when we were number 27 in infant mortality, and it was like, we're number 27. So now we're number 41 in press freedom. We're number 41. Right. I'm sorry.
There was a slight improvement, Tom, actually, in the last World Press Freedom Index by Reporters Without Borders.
Jeez.
But there's been a shift.
I'm guessing the internet has something to do with the improvement.
Yes. Alternative media is so important, Tom. Independent media like free speech television and your program is so important. So people, please support
and the great research and reporting that you're doing. Mark Taylor-Canfield. Mark, thanks for dropping by today. Good talking.
Thanks, Tom.
We'll be back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And just a quick kind of a programming note, as it were. The third hour of our program today, we're going to replay an interview that I did with Dr. Peter Wadhams, which I think is one of the most important interviews with regard to the future of our planet. I'm talking about the entire planet having to do with climate change. But I do want to get into this in this first hour. And in fact, solicit your thoughts on this as well. It occurred to me that, first of all, I agree with the president. The president this morning said, this is a terrible and tragic thing. Police officers should not be targeted for execution. And that, this goes without saying, this is wrong. It's particularly bizarre that they went after Dallas police officers. Dallas has not only an African-American police chief, but a fairly progressive one. Dallas is one of the most progressive big city police departments in the country. And with one of the lowest incidents of complaints against the police department and, police violence against citizens of any big city in the country. Dallas is actually a damn good police department. But this Xavier Johnson is his name, the shooter, who the police took out with a bomb. He is ex-military. He was apparently trained as a sniper in the Army. He had been in the Army. His military pictures are all over Facebook and whatnot. So I've got this whole jumble of thoughts on this, and I just want to toss a couple of these things out here, and because I don't think there's any simple answer to this stuff. But number one, capitalism. To what extent? The slave trade was capitalism. Richard Nixon. This is. You could go back. This from the New York Daily News. A piece by Adam Edelman. John Ehrlichman, back in 1999, said, you want to, by the way, in 1999, more people died from choking on their food or falling downstairs than died from illegal drugs. I'm not in 1999, in 1968, excuse me, Nixon. More people died from choking on their food or falling down the stairs than died from illegal drugs. But Richard Nixon needed a law and order issue that he could use to get elected, and he could use to galvanize the what he called the silent majority, which is, Trump's euphemism for, angry white people. And John Ehrlichman, who died in 1999, gave an interview with Dan Baum, a journalist, in 1994. It was in Harper's Magazine, in which he said, you want to know what this is really all about? Now, keep in mind, this was before there was a war on drugs. This was before there was, hyper-policing. Although, as I've said many times, black people have been being killed by police forever. As long as there have been black people in police in North America. He said, you want to know, but in this modern incarnation, this hyper-militarization of the police, most of it came out of the drug war. And Ehrlichman says, you want to know what this is really all about? The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black. But by getting the public to help to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know that we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. So in 1971, Nixon labeled drug abuse public enemy number 1, signed the Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act, and created the Drug Enforcement Administration. So you got that. Then on top of that, you've got all this war material flowing to police departments during the Obama administration, according to Pentagon data. And again, this is a program that started during Reagan. Police departments have received tens of thousands of machine guns, nearly 200,000 ammunition magazines, thousands of pieces of camouflage and night vision equipment, hundreds of silencers, armored cars, and aircraft. Police SWAT teams are now deployed. This is Mattapuzzo in today's New York Times. Police SWAT teams are now deployed tens of thousands of times every year, increasingly for routine jobs. Masked, heavily armed police officers in Louisiana raided a nightclub as part of a liquor inspection. In Florida, officers in SWAT gear and with guns drawn carried out raids on barber shops that led mostly only to charges of barbering without a license. This is the Department of Defense's 1033 program. This is the most recent one. It was passed in 1997 to expand on a 1991 George Herbert Walker Bush initiative. And the Cato Institute, the former Charles Koch Institute, says we believe civilian police officers should use the absolute minimum amount of force necessary. The goal of the military, is to find the enemy and destroy the enemy using maximum force. When you begin to blur the difference between the two, what we find is a violation of constitutional rights and unnecessary injuries. So, A, you could argue, this was politics. But B, you could argue people are making money off keeping black people down and hyper-militarizing the police. Money is being made delivering weaponry to the police. Money was being made on the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, which is where this sniper who murdered these police officers shot 12, killed 5. In Iraq and Afghanistan, this is where he learned how to be a sniper. Money is being made on the private prisons and transporting people and feeding them and everything else. And money is being given to the politicians to keep it that way. Over at Red State this morning, which is a right-wing website, right? Brian from Red State is a regular on my TV show. It's a conservative website. And a fellow by the name of Leon Wolf wrote a piece this morning over there that's really actually worth reading. There's a link to it over at Democratic Underground, and we'll get it up on our sites too. It's titled "The Uncomfortable Reason Why I Came to This in Dallas Yesterday." This is a conservative website. He says, as a child of white parents who grew up in rural Panhandle, Texas, I was taught the police were there to help. Okay. He says, now imagine for a minute that your parents instead grew up as black people in the 50s or 60s in one of the areas where police were the agents of, let's call it what it was, white oppression. How might that have changed for understandable reasons, the way not only those people but also their children and their children's children interact with police? Most importantly, how might it impact the belief that police will ever be held accountable for abuses of their power? And this is where he gets to the really important point. He says the most important safety valve to prevent violence like we saw in Dallas last night is the belief that when officers go off the rails, the legal system will punish them accordingly. If minority communities, or anyone else for that matter, and everyone else for that matter, believed that when police go off the rail, they'll be punished accordingly, resort to reprisal killings would either be non-existent or far less frequent. But they don't, and there's good reason for that, and that's because a huge, overwhelming segment, in other words, they don't believe that, a huge, overwhelming segment of America really does not give a damn what cops do in the course of maintaining order, because they assume, probably correctly, and we're talking about white folks here, that abuse at the hands of police will never happen to them. As long as the cops keep people away from my door, they have my blessing handling the thugs in whatever way they see fit. And then he says, I see that attitude all the time, even in the comments to the stories I write here at Red State. Look, this is not how a free society works. So we've got all these, this confluence of all these cross currents, many of which have to do with money and politics. And if you think that keeping black people down for hundreds of years isn't about money and politics, wake up. Craven, crass politics and blood money. So anyhow, your thoughts on this after this.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.